My name is Katja Brundiers. I'm the co-lead of the Transformational Sustainability Science Group at the University of Freiburg. Welcome to the Evidence from the Field series. In today's story, we learn about how an institutional transdisciplinary interface manager working from within city administration was able to grow the city-university partnership into a city-university community partnership. And in so doing, they used a variety of specific techniques, and two stuck out to me specifically. They did this first by creating a deep cycle of listening and partnership building, and second, by collecting the evidence that a dedicated staff of project transdisciplinary interface managers are necessary to cultivate these partnerships in the long term. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Braden Kay. I'm currently the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Manager at the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation at the state of California. And I'm here talking today about my role as an ITIM and as a PTIM at the City of Tempe as the Sustainability and Resilience Director at the city. Resilience could do with a variety of partners, including Arizona State University. And part of this challenge is for the first 5 years and for the first two phases I've talked to you about, the initiation phase and then the first climate action plan, it was just me as the Office of Sustainability and some interns and fellows that were able to work in our office. And what we really wanted out of the climate action plan update was, one, develop this community voice into the climate action plan work that we were doing, but also figure out how to have permanent staff in the Office of Sustainability that could really be ongoing partners that driving this work within the city and therefore able to handle more university partnerships. I think one thing that often happens when small and mid-sized or jurisdictions try to work with a university is there becomes a limiting factor of how much capacity the city staff has to really facilitate the work. And so it needed to move beyond me as an individual Tim shepherding this work between city and university partners to me having a team of Tims that could do this work, in multiple dimensions. And so that moved us to the Climate Action Plan update in 2022. And the really interesting thing about this work did two important things. One is it really helped us set a new framework for how we were going to be doing our extreme heat work. And then it helped us set up a new framework for how to do city-university community partnerships. And so we actually created 4 different climate agendas for this work. And each of the agendas we created were a slightly different city-university community partnership. So we created the business agenda that was with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce and Local First Arizona. We created the youth agenda, which was with the local school districts, several different schools, several young people within Tempe, supported by the Cool Kids grant, which was led by Dr. Paul Caseo and Dr. Katja Brunders. And then we did the climate justice agenda that we did with a local community-based organization, Unlimited Potential, that was able to make sure that our work was grounded in Indigenous communities and in BIPOC communities, specifically many of the Mexican American community that existed and Spanish-speaking community that exists in Tempe. And then lastly, we worked with Dr. Lauren Withacombe-Keeler and Marta Burbis and others with a class who helped us create a neighborhood agenda to make sure that we were doing neighborhood-based work that was also partnering with community-based organizations. And so those 4 different agendas allowed us to really do deep listening to community members and making sure that the actions that we were coming up with were based in what community members really thought needed to be happening. So one example that was so interesting was around local food. As we created the youth agenda, young people really saw the need for more community gardens and urban forests and urban farms and local food. And that is something that actually the university and the city had tried to do together with Dr. Arnhem Week, but there wasn't as much community support for it. Once we had more support to really listen to the youth and figure out that they wanted to be champions for local food, we were able to get local food into the Climate Action Plan update, and then we were able to get funding from the USDA to do a whole set of city-university partnerships with the Sweaty Food Center and with Dr. Arnhem Week around local food. So it was a perfect example of how, as a TIM, I was able to work with the university on bringing youth voices into our climate action plan. Those youth voices asked for additional actions to be taken, including local food, which allowed us to go back into the university and create more partnerships and projects with other experts, the local food experts at the university. So that's an example of how the TIM work went beyond just a single city person working with a single university person to start to understand more complicated dynamics of you do more engagement in city community university partnerships, and then the community says what it wants, and then it means that you go to other experts within the university to do new projects, then you do more engagement with the community, and it becomes this cycle of deep listening and partnership with community, and then more extensive and dynamic partnerships within the university. So that was one example of how this deeper community partnership work could really work within this context. And then the exciting piece is the Climate Action Plan allowed us to then hire people to do this work. So we hired a new youth engagement coordinator to further seek out our work with schools and young people. We hired a climate justice coordinator to work on climate and energy justice to make sure we were working on energy equity and that work. We hired someone that was going to be able to work on local food and land stewardship. And then eventually we were also able to hire someone that could work on resilient neighborhoods, including resilience hubs and resilient energy hubs. The other thing that we learned from this process of the Climate Action Plan update is, as I said before, the Climate Action Plan allowed us to have some initial partnerships around extreme heat and emergency management. And what Dr. Katja Brunders and Dr. Paul Caseo were able to help us do is actually create a framework for equitable cooling. And this city-university partnership between ASU and City of Tempe allowed us to co-develop a new approach to implementing extreme heat. By having the university and the city come together to come up with a whole new framework for how to use data for decision making, it helped me as a TIM have a much more sophisticated way of figuring out which partners in the city needed to be involved in which decision making, and which researchers and what types of data sets needed to be involved in the thinking. So this really, to me, reflects a much more advanced way of doing city-university partnerships, where you're working with a whole new research framework and a whole new understanding about how data gets used, and then therefore which research partners and which city professionals are necessary for which decisions. So this was really a very sophisticated way, in my mind, of moving forward these city-university partnerships, and really making sure that the city and the university were working together on where to put infrastructure, how to design that infrastructure, and then what materials should be used in that infrastructure. And so that is an example of going way, way beyond a single project where you just work on one thing, like, let's say, transit shelter design, to a whole framework for how the city makes decisions around extreme heat and how the city partners with the university around those decisions.
Thank you, Braden, for sharing your story. And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed the story of the institutional transdisciplinary interface manager who helped the city-university partnership evolve into a city-university community partnership through collaborating on a project that was really critical for the city, the update of the first climate action plan. Having learned from past experiences, the institutional transdisciplinary interface manager ensured that this process centered community voices and incorporated their climate actions into the plan. The process also allowed for acquiring new funding for more projects and to hire staff, importantly, also on the city side, to conduct these transdisciplinary projects with the scientists. Lastly, the process generated a framework for city and university partners to co-create solutions around equitable urban cooling. Stay tuned for now the final phase of Braden's story on fostering the transdisciplinary interface in a city.